No, you did not read that title wrong. Today, we are talking about the Horus Heresy, the single longest running book series for Games Workshop, and was their lightning in a bottle, spanning over 60 books. Which is funny that they got over 60 books from something that started out as a single paragraph back in the first edition of Warhammer. Now a disclaimer. This video is not going to cover the entire series. I am not that insane enough to cover the events of over 60 books. This video is meant to go over the key points of the event, and help newcomers and those interested in Warhammer's fluff to know about the events in question. If you are looking for specific events or characters, I am sorry, that will probably not be covered here. Otherwise than that, sit back and enjoy. So, yep. Back in the day before Primarchs were Primarchs, and when you needed a GM to run your games of 40k, the Horus Heresy was just a small paragraph in the rulebook, detailing how the Emperor's greatest general betrayed him. Then, over the years, it was expanded upon, from who Horus was to how the war played out. Though the details changed a few times, the only thing staying consistent was that Horus is corrupted by chaos, a ship called the Eisenstein is able to warn the Imperium, and the Emperor and Horus have their final duel, where Horus dies and Big E gets stuck on the most uncomfy seat as a corpse. Then, in the 2000s, Games Workshop and its writers sought to answer the following. What was the Horus Heresy? Who were these Primarchs? And what actually happened? Basically, for those who keep saying Warhammer never retconned itself, I present the de facto biggest example of Warhammer retconning itself. This series changed a whole lot of what modern Warhammer is, for better or worse. Now, since we're summarizing over 60 books, this is going to be a long video. There will be visuals, of course, so get comfy and enjoy this exercise of me sharing my mental illness with you. This is my way of coping with it. So, to talk about the Horus Heresy, we need to cover the Great Crusade. Basically, leading up to Millennium 30, humanity's great empire collapsed, leaving what colonies that survived to either fend for themselves, die in just the worst ways possible, or become enslaved or clients for other races that took them in. Either way, shit wasn't fun, and Earth did that thing we all fear in our modern time. Nuked itself back into the Stone Age, leading to every post-apocalyptic story you can think of, from Mad Max to Fist of the North Star. However, a group would pop up from the ashes of the Earth, led by a man named the Emperor of Mankind, who, to make a long story short, made discount insane super soldiers, killed anyone who stood in his and his Imperium's way, including some old man with a bell that began to ring. Think it had something to do with the apocalypse? That's probably not something to worry about. Then, once Earth, now called Terra, was conquered, he killed all his discount super soldiers and began work on his next super soldier project. This project would be the Primarch Project, where the Emperor, with the help of several scientists and his, at the time, wife Erda, who donated her eggs to the cause, created the 20... What? 18? What do you mean it's a crime to say 20? The punishment is what? Correction. 18 Primarchs. Trust me on this one. Your back will be forever grateful. However, during the project, Erda grew worried that the Emperor was not interested in treating the Primarchs like human beings, but as child soldiers who have the personality of bran cereal. Her fears being stoked by the 40k's gods who had reasons to be angry at the Emperor and fuck with him. So, like any reasonable mom to be, she just went into the lab and conducted a ritual to scatter her kids across the galaxy through the warp. You know, a perfectly reasonable response when your hubby has the ability to rend reality apart by thinking it. So, the Primarchs were scattered, Erda was allowed to escape, and the Emperor and his scientists would take what DNA was left of the Primarchs and rush another super soldier project called the Adaptus Astartes, aka the Space Marine Legions.
Foreshadowing is a literary device, and
once he had 20, 18 legions, the Emperor launched his Great Crusade, reuniting mankind's lost colonies, finding the scattered Primarchs, and wiping out anyone they deemed a threat to the Imperium, whether they be alien or human, even the ones who peacefully wanted nothing to do with them and didn't want to repeat the situation that got them into this mess in the first place. Now, after finding all 18 Primarchs and 2 weird blank spots, the Great Crusade was reaching the peak of its glory. The Legions were the poster boys of the Crusade, and the goal of the Imperium to wipe out superstition and religion from the galaxy was succeeding. Yes, the Emperor hates religion. However, I guess you could say this is where shit started going wrong, with this weird choir kid named Lorgar, Primarch of the 17th Legion. He grew up on a religious world where he was raised with a religious mindset, and arguably the worst side of those ideals. He believed that his father, the Emperor, was a god, and I can't really blame him. If my dad can make shit explode with his brain and glowed like an iridescent light bulb powered by the goddamn sun, and I was raised by a religious psychopath who beat me for asking why the sky is blue, I would believe it too. Lorgar started spreading the religion of the Emperor to the masses, his legion taking extended time to indoctrinate conquered civilizations to the religion. The first few times, the Emperor told him to knock it off, which Lorgar ignored. So the Emperor took action, sitting his son down, talking with him, and sharing why he wasn't a god and the reasons for why the Emperor didn't want to be seen as a god. No, he didn't do that. Well, what did he do? Oh god! Oh fuck!
Foreshadowing is a literary device and
Yeah, the Emperor, instead of being a rational adult, got my boys the Ultramarines to go to the 17th Legion's crowning achievement of conquest, and forced the Ultramarines to burn it down, while the Word Bearers and Lorgar were forced to kneel in the ashes and told to go back and redo their work, and making it very clear he wasn't a god. So, with Lorgar doing the depressive burrito in his private chambers, it allowed the forces of chaos, using their longtime agents Erebus, the chief chaplain of the Word Bearers, and Lorgar's psychotic adoptive father Corferon, to convince Lorgar to go on a quest to find the Chaos Gods, which he did, and decided that the guys who encouraged this list of atrocities were the right choice to follow. With this new faith in place, Lorgar and the Word Bearers put together a plan to burn the Imperium to the ground, because the gods demanded, and fuck everyone else! The plan was focused around infiltrating the other legions with secret societies called warrior lodges, and turning the favorite son Horus Lupercal against the Emperor. While the Word Bearers planned for 30 years, Horus Lupercal and the Emperor managed to defeat the greatest orc empire to ever exist on the planet of Ullanor, basically destroying the last empire that could pose a tangible threat to the Imperium at large. And the Emperor, to the shock of everyone, promoted Horus to the rank of War Master, giving him all the authority and power of the Emperor, and leaving him in charge of the Great Crusade. So to sum up, Daddy said, "You're the breadwinner now," and pieced out to get milk at home while leaving his son to deal with all of this mess that he made. Oh, and while you're balancing your 17 other brothers and their legions, the Imperial military and colonizing worlds, we're also going to be sending civilians to the fleets to be both administrators yapping in your ear, while also begging you to tell them stories. Oh, and all this is non-negotiable. So Horus now has to balance all of that, on top of his own legion, and keeping on pace with his own schedule of conquest. This proved to be too much for even Horus, who, I remind you, is basically a demigod who processes information faster and more clearly than a supercomputer. And the poor guy was so burnt out and stressed that it got to the point where any failure that happened, even if Horus wasn't around for it, felt like it was his fault. And it only got worse when Erebus, who was riding around with Horus as Lorgar's representative, revealed to Horus that Yugen Temba, Horus's best friend, had betrayed the Imperium and rebelled, leading a very angry and burnt out Horus to head to the moon of Davin to kill Temba himself. However, the whole event turned out to be a trap, with the sons of Horus coming under attack from demons of Nurgle. Horus fights a demonic Yugen who manages to wound Horus with a blade that basically deletes your existence if it even nicks you slightly. And Horus got stabbed with it. Twice! Even after killing Temba, Horus was, well, dying? And nothing the Apothecarion was doing was helping, leading to Erebus going to the Warrior Lodge. You see, the Warrior Lodges were framed as drinking clubs, a place for officers and the soldiers of the line to get together as equals and chill out together. However, secretly, it was a place where conspiracy theories thrived and politics within and between the different legions played out. And here, Erebus managed to convince the Warrior Lodge of the Sons of Horus to take Horus down to the planet of Davin, where the gods could heal Horus. Out of options, the Legion officers brought Horus down to Davin and handed him over to the Serpent's Lodge, where a ritual began that allowed the gods of chaos to talk to Horus directly, which they did, revealing a controlled narrative to Horus. Horus was shown the past, Earth in its prime, then dying, the day he and his brothers were scattered across the galaxy. Then he was shown the future. The galaxy was in flames from the Emperor's ambition, and a hive city that was celebrating the Emperor and some of the Primarchs as gods. We know these scenes as modern 40k, but the key fact here is that they showed him all of this with zero context, using his depression, paranoia, and anger against him, and letting him think that these future events were going to happen because of the Emperor's plan for the galaxy. One of Horus's brothers, Magnus the Red, who was going through his own bullshit, tried to convince a now very angry Horus that the gods and Erebus, who was pretending to be one of Horus's dead officers, were full of shit, which Horus took what Magnus said and shoved it back in his face because Magnus was breaking the Emperor's rules, and if the Emperor's own edicts were gonna fuck him over and get him in trouble, then the Emperor is a failure and will bring the galaxy to ruin. So Horus, after being healed by the gods from his System 32 deletion disease, began to plan his grand conspiracy and rebellion, making sure to fuck over Magnus, who tried to warn the Emperor of his betrayal, but ended up making things worse for himself by accidentally destroying the Emperor's secret project and not being able to properly deliver the warning. So Horus changed the capture order to a kill order to properly deal with Magnus and his legion. To make sure Horus's plan succeeds, he spends a full year cementing alliances with the Mechanicum and Imperial Army forces, corrupting the other legions, or redeploying/sabotaging legions he knew he couldn't turn to his side, basically making sure the legions he knew his rebellion could easily crush were nearby to be crushed, and the legions he couldn't destroy easily or could defeat him were far, far away, and that all of his allies and forces got the best weapons and armor that were coming off the production lines. When things were finally ready, Horus began his heresy by bringing 4 legions to a rebelling system called Istvaan. The Sons of Horus, the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and the Emperor's Children sent their loyalist members to the surface of Istvaan 3 to be annihilated. However, a snag happened. A loyalist officer within the Emperor's Children Legion managed to figure out the scheme and warn the loyalist Death Guard captain of the Eisenstein about the betrayal, leading to the Eisenstein escaping the trap, and the surviving loyalist forces on Istvaan delayed Horus and the traitors' plans by 3 months by surviving for that long. The Eisenstein was able to get to Terra and warn the Emperor and loyalist forces of Horus's betrayal. However, this would lead to the drop site massacre, where the 3 loyalist legions, the Iron Hands, the Salamanders, and the Raven Guard, were deployed to Istvaan 5 to kill or capture the traitor Primarchs. 4 other legions that were secretly traitors, the Iron Warriors, the Night Lords, the Alpha Legion, and the Word Bearers, were deployed with them, and were meant to be a second wave to finish off the traitors on Istvaan 5. After landing as the second wave, they revealed themselves to be traitors and practically annihilated the loyalist legions in a hammer and anvil scenario, with the Iron Hands losing their Primarch Varus Manus, Vulcan of the Salamanders being nuked and captured, and the Raven Guard Primarch Corax escaping with 3,000 of his legion, and very few other loyalist survivors scattering to the winds. With 3 legions down and the other 6 legions preoccupied and scattered across the galaxy, Horus began his rebellion, with whole sectors of the Empire rising up against the Emperor and his forces. And holy fuck, a lot happens. So we are going to speedrun this shit. So, the following events happened in no particular order. Mars broke into open revolt, with its leadership siding with Horus and spreading a demonic computer virus across the planet. However, the Imperial Fist Legion and Fleet Solar managed to blockade the planet and save as much material and personnel as possible to improve the defenses for the inevitable invasion. The Space Wolves, realizing that they had been tricked, struck out to try and get revenge against Horus, only for the Alpha Legion to pop up and slap their shit in, leading to the Space Wolves retreating back to Terra to spend time recovering from both that mess and the destruction of the Thousand Sons Legion. The Wordbearers and World Eaters were deployed to the Ultramar sector, where the Wordbearers conducted a devastating assault on the Ultramarines, then led a crusade through Ultramar and used the conflict to not only keep the Ultramarines distracted, but also divide the galaxy in half with a warp storm called the Ruin Storm. The Blood Angels were deployed to a sector of space far removed from the other legions, with a promise to cure their genetic flaw, only to find demons waiting there for them. They came out of it mauled and limping into Ultramar, and the Dark Angels were distracted for 7 years, chasing the Night Lords around and shattering them after getting a TARDIS-like device called the Tachoka engine. And then they would also limp into Ultramar. The White Scars were kept isolated in hopes that they could be convinced to join Horus, but they managed to get out of the quarantine zone they were trapped in, learned about the Heresy, dealt with their inner circle of traitors, and for good measure, their Primarch would prove to be the roasting god of their family, because anytime he engaged with the traitors, he verbally tore their Primarchs a new asshole. Horus's forces cut a path to the world of Mulek, where he would use a portal there to enter the warp, complete several trials, and gain the power he needed to fight the Emperor, but with a horrible price that we will cover later. And the remaining loyalist forces around the galaxy began to run guerrilla-style warfare, nipping at the traitors' heels and slowing them down massively, giving as much time as possible for Terra and its defenders to prepare, though many of the attacks would prove to be either only minorly damaging or nothing to worry about. However, leading up to the invasion of Terra, shit was starting to get out of control for Horus. The traitor legions weren't following his orders, and 2 of their Primarchs had ascended to demonhood and now had no interest in the civil war. He had to put down a rebellion within his own ranks from Lorgar trying to usurp his position as War Master, as Horus refused to fully commit to the powers of chaos. That rebellion got put down, with Lorgar and the Wordbearers loyal to him being banished from the rebellion. He started the damn thing, only to get his ass kicked out of it. Wow! With his inner circle sorted out and the remaining traitor legions regrouping, Horus began the end of his rebellion at the same place he was promoted to War Master, Ullanor, and from there, he launched the invasion of the Sol System. However, other events played out, with the White Scars making it to Terra, and the Blood Angels also managed to get back to Terra with the help of the Dark Angels and Ultramarines, leading to an unpredicted scenario where 3 whole legions were defending Terra. Now, the invasion of Terra was its own book series, with 11 full books released depicting the siege, which plays out as such. The traitor forces managed to jump past Fleet Solar and circumvent the orbital defenses, launching so many dropships, pods, and other things onto Terra that it literally blackened the sky. They threw so many slaves, insane army troopers, and monsters at the walls that they could use the slaughter to weaken reality and summon the demonic legions of chaos to Terra. Slowly, the loyalist forces were pushed back, losing ground but paying the traitors back for every inch they gained. Hell, at one point, the loyalists managed to trick the traitor forces into an underground assault, where most of the Sons of Horus's command structure was killed. The Iron Warriors were so done with the pushback that they quit the field, and the Emperor's children were only passively there, kidnapping millions of civilians left outside the defenses. A larger win would be near the end, where the White Scars not only retook a major spaceport, but also managed to banish the Death Guard Primarch Mortarion, who became a Demon Prince of Nurgle on the way to Terra, and scatter the Death Guard Legion, leading to their retreat from Terra, though this wouldn't be enough to stem the tide. Eventually, the Emperor, who this whole time, thanks to Magnus the Red's fuck-up, was keeping a warp portal closed under Terra, finally joined the fighting. Turns out that Horus, who by this point has clearly gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, turned off his void shields, luring the Emperor into a final, all-out duel to decide it all. And with the warp fucking with the galaxy and the Sol system, it looked like reinforcements weren't going to make it in time to break the siege. So the Emperor, with an escort of Custodes, Rogel Dorn, 100 Imperial Fists, and Sanguinius of the Blood Angels, all teleported aboard Horus's ship, into an obvious trap that scattered them across the ship. Though the traps were wearing down the Loyalists, the first to reach Horus would be Sanguinius, who, despite what the legends would say, got his ass handed to him so hard that when he was finally killed in such a dispassionate way, the resulting psychic backlash caused the remaining Blood Angels to suffer from their trademark, Black Rage, and launch a horrific counterattack, pushing the traitors back. When the Emperor finally arrived, it was on sight, fighting Horus both on the physical and psychic planes, though the forces of Chaos had stacked the deck, with the 4 Chaos Gods puppeting the clearly broken Horus around and trying to break the Emperor and turn him into a 5th Chaos God. That shit doesn't work, and although Horus uses Exodia on the Emperor is still able to sever the Chaos God's connection to Horus in a moment of Horus's weakness, and mortally wound him. With Horus now free of the Chaos God's influence, and realizing all he had done since he was wounded on Davin 14 years ago, begs for the Emperor to kill him, which the Emperor finally does. And that's how the Horus Heresy, one of the longest running series of books, ends, with the Emperor mortally wounded and put on the Golden Throne to keep him alive, and the traitor forces fleeing as reinforcements arrive. The Imperium would never be the same again. Modern 40k's storylines have been heavily affected by this series since its start in 2006, with the following events clearly getting their starts from these Horus Heresy books. As well, more plot points within the heresy that remain unresolved would be answered later in other events or books within 40k's sandbox, which is why I didn't cover the Horus Heresy in an extended manner, because I respect your time, and I hope you respect what little sanity I have fucking left. Now, with the ending of the Horus Heresy, this of course would lead into every other event within 40k, from Kaliman beginning the Primaris Project, to the Space Marine Legions becoming chapters, the events that would lead to the Black Crusades of Abaddon the Despoiler, the Tyrannic Wars because of the Shadow Crusade and Ultramar, and along with the Primarchs slowly disappearing, and now coming back into modern 40k. I hope this video was enough to at least inform you of the key points of what happened in the Horus Heresy. It is a shotgun of quality, and a lot of the books will take you all over the timeline of the 14-year Civil War. But truly, there are amazing stories within the Horus Heresy, from the first 3 books to books that would redefine the modern 40k Space Marine chapters and other forces of the Imperium. Now, the next time we cover something, we will be covering some other smaller events that happen within 40k that you can vote for on Patreon. Yep, you can decide what series we cover over on Patreon if you subscribe. Not only do you get to vote, but you also get to watch my Patreon exclusive Battletech series, and also get to see videos a few days before they are posted on YouTube, which you should also subscribe to help support me and get notified for new videos and streams. Once I hit 15k subs, I'll be doing a Fire Warrior review, and you can watch me suffer through the game on stream. Follow the Twitch if you prefer to watch streams there. All links in the description. But until next time, everybody.